How we doing, everyone? Welcome in. It is Locked On Sooners. Derek LeBlanc heading away. Recruiting news, Champ U BBQ, all of that and more on this edition of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Sooners. Josh Elmer here with you, and we've called in the expert, your team every single day, of course, right here on the Locked On Sooners podcast and on the Locked On Network. We've called in the expert, Brian Smith, to help us make sense of some big news in Sooner land this week. Derek LeBlanc was a blue chip signee for Oklahoma in this past class, but obviously this week he is, he's transferring out from Oklahoma. Brian, first off, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. What are you hearing? What do you make of this news with Derek LeBlanc for Oklahoma?
Unfortunate, and good day to you, sir. Derek's a kid I know well. I live in Central Florida. I've been talking to him since he was a freshman in high school. He's one of those rare kids everybody knew was going to be good. And when he signed with Oklahoma, he'd told me for a long time about how he liked the staff there. He was just very comfortable and everything. And then I'm scrolling Twitter just like everybody else. And there it is. And I'm like, what? But then you read the tweet. You can kind of read between the lines. It's not an OU thing. It's a family thing. So I don't know what you do about that. It's not anybody's fault. It's just unfortunate. But Derek always was pretty tight with his family. So I'm not really surprised that he would want to be closer to home if there's any kind of family concern. And I'm not saying that I know the specifics. I do not. I haven't tried to call him or anything. It's none of my business. But if you're Oklahoma, that sucks because you spent all that time recruiting, Bates and all those guys. It just shows you how volatile college football rosters are, though. With the transfer portal, man, it's kid knows he can go play somewhere else right away. It just takes the slightest thing, and they will be in the portal.
Well, to follow up on that, what would your message be for Oklahoma fans with Todd Bates? Because just judging by not even necessarily our YouTube comment section or the folks that tweet us here for Locked On Sooners, just judging by the pulse of some of the radio conversation that I get on that end of the equation, folks, it's starting to heat up a little bit in regards to they want to see Todd Bates land a David Stone, or they want to see him get a Nwaneri. And frankly, they thought LeBlanc was one of those blue chip guys that Bates had landed. And lo and behold, obviously he leaves. So just what would your general message be to some Oklahoma fans that maybe are starting to hit the panic button a little bit with Todd Bates?
Two things. Number one, he's a very good coach and recruiter. It's not debatable. Everybody's known about him for a long time. Sit down. That's one. Number two, when you recruit elite players, and you and I were talking about this off air, they are 100% in control of the timeline. You can get mad. You can be upset. You can throw things at your computer. It will not change that. I know fan bases around I've had the same conversation with everybody that I've been on Locked On. They want the commitments now. The 17-year-olds do not care. So you're going to have to wait. And even if they commit, they're probably going to take visits. That's the era we live in. So Bates will get his players. He's a guy that, to be honest, he's probably one of the top 10 recruiters in the country that focuses on D-line. Kids love him. Kids absolutely love him. So it's just him adapting now. He's been in South Carolina. Now he's all the way out in Oklahoma. It'll take a year or two to him to get some of the Texas kids that they're used to getting, but that'll come. And he'll still probably steal a kid from Georgia or South Carolina or Florida or Alabama every now and then too. Take your time with Bates. He is a very good coach and he's a very good recruiter.
One more on LeBlanc. Is this just, individual case, or for Oklahoma with Bates and with the staff, do they need to think about the Southeastern recruiting, because that they've made that a big piece of their recruiting puzzle? Is that something that they need to reconsider?
Long term, I think you'll see a little bit less of it, but recruiting is about relationships. It's not about the state. It's the coach just happens to know all his contacts are in an area. Think about it. Most of these guys recruited down there they're not going to just suddenly give up all their contacts. Atlanta, Orlando, Miami, Birmingham, Alabama, all those places. So it's part of it. Now, by year 3, year 4, you're going to see more Dallas, Houston. It'll be more traditional OU recruiting and everywhere in between there. But for now, you have to at least do that while you're building your base in the state of Texas. It's just part of the process.
Brian Smith is in the house with us. I think I can call him our director of recruiting across the Locked On Network. He probably has a better title than that, but that's what we're going to roll with at this particular moment in time. Williams Nwaneri, big target for Oklahoma in this class, and a massive target for not just Oklahoma, for multiple programs in this 2024 cycle. Just visited OU. He's got other visits coming up this month. What have you heard about Nwaneri's visit to Oklahoma, and what do you know about sort of where we stand coming out of the OU visit for the Nwaneri recruitment across the board?
It went very well by all accounts. I do not have inside with him, as I was telling you off air. I've never scouted in Missouri before, but he's from Kansas City, so it is what it is. But the people around OU feel good. The thing with him is he has several more visits and several more opportunities to go elsewhere. That's one. And two, some of the schools involved have unique situations with him. And these are the two schools that I would worry about if I was an OU fan. Number one is Georgia. Why? It's Georgia. It's not hard to sell that right now. It's Georgia. So they're always going to be a factor. The other one would be Oregon. Dan Lanning is a very good coach, defensive guy. He's a good recruiter. And he's just done a great job of getting kids from all over the place. And they've got a visit in the fall. So Nwaneri is going to go out there, and I mean, Outson Stadium is an incredible environment. Maybe that's the place for him. Maybe it's not, but OU is going to be further away in terms of how long he's been there. I don't like June visits for 5-star guys. I've said that several times to other people. I'd rather get him on the campus for whatever school in the fall, closer to signing day. That's just my opinion. That one is very nervous for me. I know OU is the perceived leader, but Oregon especially gives me the willies.
Well, and it's Oregon, like you mentioned, that has the in-season visit. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that? Why it's important in your mind to have that maybe visit in season? Why that final impression is so important?
Part of it is just seeing what it's like to be there on game day. I'm sure you've tried to explain to somebody you've run into at an airport, somebody on the East Coast, at a wedding, whatever. Going to an Oklahoma game is like this, but you're thinking in the back of your mind, they have to experience it for themselves. Well, it's the same thing for Oregon, and that stadium is deafening. So it's an important visit for him. And when he goes and he visits Georgia, when he goes and visits Oklahoma, being able to compare it, but he sees the stadium environment at one, but not the others, I don't see how that's not an advantage. The only thing that's a negative about game day visit, especially if it's a really big game, I've heard this before in numerous programs, you can't spend quite as much time with the recruit because you're coaching. I mean, you've got meetings, you've got to go take care of all the press and all the different things that come with it. But the game day environment itself at some of these schools, LSU, Oregon, Oklahoma, whatever, it's just incredible. So the environment does it for you. And Nwaneri, I think, is going to be blown away when he goes to Oregon. And I don't think there's too many places quite like it.
Well, the Georgia angle to that recruitment, let's dive a little bit deeper into that. First, let me tell you about our friends over at Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs, they're awesome. They've got terrific apparel. I love their shorts. They're fantastic. Check them out, birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege, where you make the purchase over there. They got a tumbler they're going to toss in for you at Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege and use our promo code again, LockedOnCollege, for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That is birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take off your Bird Dogs. We promise you they're very, very comfortable shorts. They've got more than just the shorts, but shorts pretty awesome over at Bird Dogs. So the Georgia angle to the Nwaneri recruitment, and really just about any recruitment that Georgia would get in on with Oklahoma. Yeah. I mean, it looks like for me, as I'm starting to evaluate this and we say, okay, Oklahoma's done all these nice things over the last 10, 15, 20 years now, 20 plus, since they won a national championship. that's now officially the program that Oklahoma is chasing. So I look at a Nwaneri recruitment, and not to get everybody panicky, because I know we can get that way with recruiting, not just at OU, but anywhere across the board. But I mean, isn't this a recruitment, maybe not individually for Oklahoma with Nwaneri, but Oklahoma's going to have to win some of these recruitments against Georgia to go capture SEC titles and the ultimate goal that they want, right? A national championship.
If you look at the NFL draft, there are two spots that are just different than any other, and that's D end and corner as it relates to who had them, who got them drafted, and who was also in the playoffs year after year. Corner and D end in particular, pass rushers and guys that stop the pass, because those spots just change games. And if you look at who Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia have signed in the last 10 years, they've had the lion's share. And you're right. To your point, if you do not beat Georgia for that kid, then you got to play against Georgia with that kid. It's straightforward. I mean, it's just talent acquisition. It could be in any sport. It could be any type of situation. It could be in the business world. You want the best salesman on your team, not the other team. So, and this kid's a pure pass rusher, and he's got college-ready size. He could come in and start at Oklahoma as a freshman. That's probably not where Oklahoma wants to be, but their D-line wasn't exactly dominant over the last several years. They need guys like this. At Georgia, he's probably third string his first year, but they're so good, kids are still interested. It's just incredible the amount of talent they have on their defensive front seven. So it's why they're the favorite to win it every year. They have the most talent.
David Stone. If it's not Williams Nwaneri, it's David Stone, and we'll continue to talk about David Stone until this recruitment gets finalized. Is there much to report here? What's new with David Stone for Oklahoma, and really just for his recruitment in general? What are you hearing?
I'm hearing the same things that you probably are, that it's not over yet. It's a long way from being over. Oklahoma visit coming up is the big one. He's had it set for a long time. He told us when a whole bunch of us reporters were down at IMG where he goes to school that the Oklahoma visit was going to be in the middle of June. Well, that's coming up. That's the good news. The bad news is it's not anywhere near December. Like Nwaneri and like a lot of these other kids, I don't expect him to make a decision early, although he did originally say that. And I brought it up to him. Do you want to make a decision this summer? And he just didn't think he was going to be able to do that. And he only wanted to make one commitment. A lot of kids say that, then they still make two or three. But, David was honest and said, I'd really like to just pick one institution and be done. Well, I don't really know if there's a school I would pick other than Oklahoma, but Oregon's involved and Miami's involved. I think those two would be the ones I would be the most leery of. He's been to Miami several times. That's a fairly short drive. And then Oregon, again, it's Oregon. I think Michigan State has faded a little bit. They were really heavy with him for a while, but I mean, I can't see Michigan State getting kids out of the state of Oklahoma. That's just a random fit to me. I have no idea what the deal was there. If there's somebody else that gets a visit, it might be LSU. That's kind of the wild card. But everything that I've been told as of now, Oklahoma is the leader in the clubhouse. It's just going to be a while.
What can Oklahoma still show David Stone? It feels like he knows just about anything that you would want to know about a program. I mean, he's been around Oklahoma a lot, but I mean, is there any final wow factor that Oklahoma can show David Stone in the middle of this month?
The only thing I think that they can add is that he would be, I mean, there's a lot of really good players going to Norman for this weekend. Is him just to get to know the kids. I don't think it's going to have anything to do with Oklahoma's coaching staff moving forward. I know the coaches don't want to hear that either, but he's going to pick something based on relationships and because everybody's recruited the heck out of him. If it was coaching relationships, he'd already be done. It's going to have to be something with the players they bring in. There's going to have to be something. And then it is only like he's from Del City, if I remember correctly. It's pretty close to home. That's pretty convenient. If all things are equal at the end, he'll go to OU, in my opinion, because it's just the easy pick. But is there a recruit that he bonds with? Something like that. Other than that, I think we're waiting until darn near National Signing Day and Stone will pick up a hat off a table. So I don't think there's much more they can do. He's told me several times they've done a great job recruiting him. He loves Oklahoma's staff. And that's all you can ask. So it's just he's not ready to make a decision yet.
Brian Smith in the house with us. You lead me right into it right here. Champ U BBQ, something Oklahoma has put a ton of emphasis on. the last however many years, dating back into even the Lincoln Riley era. This has turned into a massive event for Oklahoma. Who all's on the short list for Oklahoma for this? And I guess just for our listeners and viewers, how important is this weekend for OU?
Well, let's go back to what you said a few minutes ago. This is the same for every school. Alabama and Georgia kind of separated themselves in the last couple of years talent-wise. Alabama might have taken a small step back, but Georgia's the team everybody's shooting for, right? If you don't get more talent than where you're at now, realistically on a neutral field, how many times are you going to beat them? Maybe 1 out of 10? They have to increase the gap. So they bring in all these guys. There's a couple of kids in particular I'm interested in. Terry Bussey out of Texas is a do-it-all athlete. He can play safety, receiver, whatever he wants. Offers from everybody. I have no idea where he's going to go, but I love that kid. That's the kind of kid Oklahoma has made a living off of forever. They've stolen kids out of Texas long before I was ever born. And speaking of, maybe the best running back in the country is going to be there. Tatum, Longview kid. He is electric. Do yourself a favor. Look up Taylor Tatum. Go look at his huddle highlights. It is a joy to watch. It's like a video game. If you get a kid like that, that's somebody that can come in and compete for playing time right away. I know there was some consternation over Sammy Brown picking Clemson, and he's probably not going to visit, or he won't visit. It is what it is. Probably the only guy that I think is kind of random that doesn't get much love from the Oklahoma fans, maybe it's because they don't know a lot about him, Dominic McKinley. He's out of Louisiana. Other kid, kind of built like LeBlanc, but man, is he athletic. LSU wants him, and so does the rest of the free world. He's another one of those guys. He can help you close the gap if you're going to catch Georgia. Everybody is chasing Georgia. This is the kind of kid they always get. Now you got to get him. So those are a few of the kids, but I went through their list a little while ago just to reaffirm it with myself. Everybody that Oklahoma has coming in this weekend is a dude. Tremendous job by the Oklahoma staff of getting them on campus. Now, which ones commit at some point and eventually sign with the Sooners? We'll find out soon enough.
What is a realistic timeline? Because I know everybody, big Champ U BBQ weekend. Okay, well, nobody committed this weekend. Nobody committed next week. What timeline coming out of it? Because again, to try and educate everybody calm down. There will be commitments before it's all said and done. What does a realistic timeline typically look like for somebody that goes to something like the Champ U BBQ?
The most empirical evidence I can give you would be from last year, because the NCAA changed around the visit schedule. Used to be you couldn't take visits till September. So we've got a very short shelf life on this. It's only been a couple of years. Based on last year, I'll just use this as an example. And I went through and looked at a ton of schools. Most of the elite players, like the ones that are going to be at the barbecue, at minimum will take 2 visits and usually 3 or 4 before they make a public commitment. Well, that puts it middle to late June before they start. That means next weekend, some of the kids may make a decision, announce Monday, Tuesday. That's the beginning. Between June 20th and about, say June 30th, you'll get about half the commitments. And then the next 10 days, just past the 4th of July, you'll have a bunch too. Last year, just as an example, Miami had 9 commitments in 3 weeks. With the visit list, it's impressive. They're Oregon, Oklahoma, Texas, Michigan, those kind of schools, they'll rack them up. But they're going after elite players. They're on their own timeline. So if somebody like Nwaneri, Stone, any of those kids that I just talked about don't decide, don't panic. I know Oklahoma fans are not real happy, Sammy Brown and stuff like that. That's just part of it. You're not going to win all these recruitments. You're not. Think about Sammy Brown went to Clemson. He turned down Georgia. You think Georgia fans are very happy? He's right in their backyard. It's part of it. You're going to lose some battles. I think that by the middle of next week, we're about 7 to 10 days out. Every day there's going to be somebody that either Oklahoma got or wanted that's going to make a decision. How many of them stick with that decision will be the conversation we have after that, because so many of them decommit and change. But starting next week is when it really gets crazy.
So I've got 2 more for you, Brian, just real quickly here. David Stone, I know that you mentioned it and I agree. Maybe it's most important that he just builds some relationships with the guys that are going to be on campus from an Oklahoma standpoint at this Champ U BBQ. I'm
Sure.
curious, going off of that, what is sort of his relationship like with some of the other guys in this class? I mean, is he someone that seeks out a bunch of relationships in this class, or what is he like from that personality standpoint?
He's a pretty easy guy to get to know. He's highly intelligent. I know I've had one recruit tell me that David wanted him to come with him to Oklahoma at one point. Was that a random conversation? I have no idea. But I mean, he's a pretty made it's been the way he was feeling that day. I have no idea. But he gets along with everybody. He really like him. So he is a bit of a Pied Piper. If he did commit to Oklahoma this summer, it would really help them build the class because everybody knows who he is. In my opinion, he's the best interior defensive lineman in the country, and it's because of his pass rushing ability. I've seen him in pass rush drills from 5 feet away. There aren't many human beings built like that are 17 years old. It's rarefied air. People know it. They want to play with that. So with his personality, man, it would be huge for whatever school to get him if they could do it this summer. And Oklahoma especially needs defensive players. I'm sure that's something that Venables and that staff have talked about, and they should. So, and I'm sure they remind him of that. Hey, you could really help yourself if you committed now. I would tell him that. That's what I would do if I was Venables. So, yeah, but he's a great kid to be around, and he's a lot of fun.
Last question here, Brian. Really appreciate your time as always. And I think you've shared, some of your analysis in the past, but a couple more predictions on the recruiting side coming in for Zion Ragins to Oklahoma. Just, like I flip on his tape and I look at it and it's like, I don't know, like Pac-Man or something zipping around out there. But what do you see from him?
I see sub 10.5 speed. That's what I see. I mean, if you think about the last, say, 7-8 years, you could make a strong argument that Oklahoma has been the best school in the country for slot receivers and smaller receivers. It'd be pretty hard to go against it, to be honest. Boy, does he fit into what like Lincoln Riley and some of those guys had and what they've continued with in terms of a style even now. And he knows he can come in and play. They don't have the same kind of depth chart that he did. He can come in and make a difference. He had a great visit. And I think the other advantage is their offense is more fast-paced. It's more aggressive. Georgia is allegedly the other school, not surprisingly, he's from there, that is high with him. But do you really want to go to Georgia if you're a kid that's a slot receiver? Kirby's probably going to run the ball. That's, his defense dominates. So I like Oklahoma's chances, but don't count out the Bulldogs for an in-state kid anytime Kirby wants somebody.
Well, Brian, we appreciate your time as always. No doubt we're going to be knocking down your door frequently as it is. It's that time of the season where commitments and some fun stuff start happening. But thank you, Brian, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Look forward to coming back on the show.
Well, and that's it for us, your team every single day right here on Locked On Sooners. For Brian, I'm Josh, and for John, who's not with us on this particular occasion, until next time, Boomers Sooner, everybody.